All right, in this video, we're going to talk about what happens to a monopolistically competitive firm in the long run and how it would start behaving, given that it's earning profits in the short run, right? So let's have a look at this situation over here, right? So here we have a demand curve, marginal revenue curve, marginal cost curve, and average total cost curve, right? And in a previous video, we actually already dealt with this graph, and we found that the optimal quantity, right, so I'm labeling it Q star here, is 7, and that's because that happens to be where marginal cost, right, marginal cost line and the marginal revenue line intersect, right? So the optimal quantity that will maximize profits for a monopolistic competitive firm, as with a perfectly competitive firm, as well as a monopolist, is the quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and that quantity here happens to be 7, right? And so here, given that they want to sell 7 units, if they know the demand curve here, they know that they can charge the price that's way up here. So whatever price is up here at this red dot, that is actually the price they would charge, right? And their average total costs, notice when the quantity is 7, is way down here. So that means that the size of this gap between these two red dots, that's actually profits per unit, right? Price minus average total cost is profits per unit, right? You multiply that by the quantity, right, which gives you this area of this imaginary rectangle here. That is actually profit. So this firm is earning positive profits, at least in the short run, right? So price greater than average total cost in the short run. That means that this firm is going to be earning positive profits, at least in the short run, right? And of course, if there are positive profits in this industry and it's monopolistically competitive, that means that other firms can enter into the industry, and they will if there's positive profits to be had. And as that happens, as firms enter the industry, that means there's going to be competition for this firm, which means demand for its product is going to decrease. Right? You can imagine maybe this is a restaurant, right? Maybe they specialize in pizza, right? So maybe they're earning positive profits, and what that tells other potential pizza establishment, or restaurant owners, is that restaurants are profitable in this market, right? And so more restaurants, different kinds of restaurants probably will start opening up and competing with this restaurant. And of course, when that happens, demand will decrease, right? Now, in the long run, what we would expect to happen, what happens in theory, is that demand will decrease all the way to the point where profits are 0, right? So that nobody else has any incentive to enter the industry, right? And that happens when the demand curve decreases enough that it's actually tangent with average total costs, right? And when the demand curve is tangent with average total cost, that means that this gap between demand and average total cost will be all the way to 0, right? So there will be no difference between price and average total cost. Price will no longer be greater than average total cost, which means profits will be 0, right? And so looking at these 4 quantities that are labeled here, we have 2, 4, 7, and 8. The only one where it's actually possible that it could be the long run quantity in the optimal quantity in the long run is actually 2. And the reason for why that is because 2 is the only quantity that's labeled where the average total cost curve is downward sloping. And if demand is going to decrease enough in the long run to where price equals average total cost, right? So the demand curve is tangent to the average total cost curve. That means that since demand is downward sloping, that tangency has to occur where average total cost is downward sloping, right? And out of all 4 of these quantities that are labeled, the only one where average total cost is downward sloping is at a 2, right? Here at 4, since that's where marginal cost crosses average total cost, that means that that's the minimum of average total cost, meaning the slope is 0 there. It's actually, the tangent line would be flat there, and a downward sloping demand curve could not be tangent to the average total cost curve at that point. Right? And then these other 2 points, 7 and 8, notice the average total cost curve is upward sloping. So those aren't possible. those aren't possible points of tangency either between the demand curve and the average total cost curve. So out of the 4 points, 2 is the only one in the long run that could possibly be a quantity that is optimal in the long run, right? So sustainable in the long run. And at that quantity, if that was true, that would be the long run quantity. Then again, profits would be zero. Right? Profits would go all the way down to zero as the gap between the demand curve, which gives us the price, and the average total cost curve, as the demand curve decreases enough to a point of tangency. All right. Okay. Thank you for watching.